Hi guys, and welcome back to Ultimate Recaps. In the future, the government starts experimenting on human genes and genetics to try and enhance our DNA, as many other species in the insect and animal kingdom have many different abilities to use to their advantage that humans don't currently possess. Like, for example, an octopus can camouflage itself, and some rodents can manipulate their bones to fit into tiny places. And by taking all their genes and DNA, they formed a pill called Power, giving anyone who takes it a superpower for a certain amount of time. The story begins in New Orleans, where a huge cargo ship called the Genesis has dropped off several large containers and are loaded onto many different trucks, and the mysterious contents inside is going to be distributed around the city. Meanwhile, we are introduced to a guy named Biggie, and he invites a group of delinquents who he likes to call a group of open-minded and inspiring young entrepreneurs, but they just look like a bunch of SoundCloud rappers and Team 10 YouTubers from 2015. Anyways, Biggie pulls out the contents from the truck and he tells them about a new pill called Power, giving anyone who takes it a special power for about 5 minutes, and these powers are completely unique to each person's body. After he explains how they will get the product for free, and they can sell it at whatever price they want. After a guy named Newt is a little more curious than the others and asks what the product actually is, and Biggie tells them it's a little pill called Power. Just days after it being shipped out, calls to the police and emergency services were being made all around the city of New Orleans. Later on, we see a girl named Robin rapping and singing as she examines the Power pill. She is one of the new distributors and is carrying 3 of the pills at the moment, until she hears some buyers outside calling Robin by her street name Bird. The boys yell Bird many times and Robin comes out masked up with the product. After the 3 boys notice that the dealer is only a small girl, and they tell her to give them all the power for free.
Instead of selling it to us, why don't you just give it to her?
Don't touch me!
After a fight ensues, and they nearly take the product, but just in time, a man interrupts the fight who is a New Orleans police officer named Frank Shaver.
NOPD!
When Frank arrives, he makes them all stop by showing his gun and tells them he is NOPD, and just then one of the boys activates the pill and wants to use it against the cop. But Frank warns him that he's only here to help, as power has been known to malfunction for certain people. So the boy hesitates on using it, and while he chickens out, Frank snatches the product and tells them all to get lost, as he pretends to only arrest one of them, being Robin, the distributor. However, when they are alone, Frank releases Robin from the cuffs, and it turns out they are actually friends, and Frank has been buying power from her for many weeks now, since the criminals have been taking it, and he's the only one in the police force who secretly takes it to level the playing field. Robin thanks Frank for helping her, and told Frank she loves his motorbike, and right after Frank gives her the motorbike for her birthday present. The next day, we're introduced to a man named Art, who visits the rundown apartments in the slums of New Orleans, and here he is searching for one of Biggie's suppliers named Newt, the guy from earlier on, who points a gun from behind the door at Art, as Art keeps asking Newt where he gets the power from, and he tells Newt he's a new distributor called the Major, so Newt makes a call to confirm if he's telling the truth. But while this happens, Art uses a trick to unlock the door's latch and enters Newt's apartment. As he enters, he notices the apartment is in shambles, and even strange animals inside the rooms, and even a pet alligator. When Art finds Newt, he stuns him and tells him not to move while being point blank with a shotty, but Newt still tries to get his pistol. So Art retaliates, and after a small scuffle between the two ensues before Newt takes refuge in the bathroom. After, Art hears Newt's phone ringing and snags it to investigate it later, and repeatedly asks him to surrender and tell him who the supplier is.
All you gotta do is tell me who your supplier is.
However, Newt doesn't listen and takes out his stash of power and uses one to fight Art. And here we get an amazing visual display of what happens when you take the power. Newt's ability is something to do with fire, as his whole body is engulfed in flames, and from here he attacks Art in his power form, charging at him, but Art manages to swiftly dodge the flaming Newt, and Art responds by firing a shoddy slug at his chest, but this blast only seemed to make Newt's power stronger, so Art decides to flee from the room. At this time, Newt decides to take 3 more power, and the fight continues as Newt finds him a floor below, and here the angry neighbor didn't understand what she was witnessing, and she quickly threw a tub of water at the fiery Newt. This seems to have hurt Newt's power, and after seeing him slow down, Art takes this opportunity to set up a trap, turning on the cold shower into the bath, and soaking his jacket in cold water, and waits for Newt to attack again. And when he does, he wraps the flaming Newt in the jacket and threw him in the tub of water, demanding him to tell him who the source is and where to find him.
Who's making it? Tell me the source. Tell me right now. Who's the supplier?
After dunking his head several times, he eventually gives it up and coughs out the name Biggie, before suddenly erupting into smithereens due to taking too many power-uppers. Upon exploding, this causes Art to have a flashback of when he was in an accident, and when the car crashed, Art's daughter named Tracy was taken by some mysterious soldiers who worked for the Genesis Company. Soon, we are introduced to Irene, who is Robin's mother, who happens to be very sick with extreme diabetes, and they are struggling to make ends meet, which explains why her daughter Robin, or Bird, is involved with this type of business, as she wants to support her family. Later on, Robin and Irene check the news and notice that Newt's apartment has been blown to pieces with the firefighters outside the house, so Irene tells Robin to check on him and make sure he's okay. As it turns out, Newt is Robin's cousin. After the commotion, Robin leaves for school and promises her mother she will bring back her prescriptions and some soup for dinner later. At school, Robin made sure to check on Newt and consistently texts him during class, but this gets Robin in trouble and a warning from her stern and uptight teacher, who then embarrasses her in front of the class for her shockingly low grades, and he asks her how she's going to be anything in life if she continues failing in school. But her friend quickly chimes in and told the teacher she could be a rapper, and the teacher tells her to prove it, and if it's good he will give her a better score. So she does.
Diplomas won't determine who I am or who I might be.
However, this was actually all in her head, and she didn't perform the rap, and instead crashes out and leaves the classroom, dumping her stuff along the way. On the other side of things, Art was pretending to be Newt, as he was getting all the text messages from Newt's phone from Robin, and he arranges Robin to meet him in a cafe, and Robin goes there thinking she's getting more product to sell. Meanwhile, the cop Frank gets a call about an ongoing bank robbery, which the other officers claim to be a pretty tricky situation, and as he inspects the area, one of the escaped hostages tells him he didn't see the robber and claims to have been hit by a ghost. The chief of police is seen talking to two gentlemen dressed in all black, Genesis soldiers, who say they can de-escalate the situation themselves. However, Frank is having none of this and wants to move forward with his own plan, and takes matters into his own hands by taking one of the power-uppers and immediately sets a timer on his watch for 5 minutes. Upon entering the bank, he accidentally passes by the culprit, as the thug has taken some power, and now he can instantly camouflage on the fly, just like a chameleon. The guy takes a shot at Frank from behind and proceeds to run off with the bags of money, so Frank quickly ensues and chases after him, but the guy is super fast and just like translucent, but eventually the invisible man ends up on a bus. After the robber checks the bags but is attacked by dye instead, and this covers his body, making him more visible, and now that Frank can see him, it makes his job much easier, and finally catches him in an alleyway and thinks the man is down. However, he gets back up and tries shooting Frank, but Frank's power makes him completely bulletproof, and the man can't hurt him, and Frank is completely unharmed from the bullets. After Frank takes advantage of his power and gets up to finish the job and eliminates Mr. Chameleon. Later on, Frank got a quick checkup from the doc, but he tells her he feels nothing and feels completely fine, which surprises her. Afterwards, Frank's boss, the chief of New Orleans' police department, confronts Frank about his powers, and Frank ultimately admits to taking the power, and so the chief tells him to hand over his gun and badge. But after doing so, Frank fights his case and explains to him how an officer should be able to take it if the criminals are also on power, as it evens out the odds and protects him from other enhanced individuals while on the job. But the chief only gives him a chance to remain in the force and to keep using power, only if he focuses on the main task and uses it to find the source of power to stop it once and for all. And Frank agrees to take on this task, and the first thing he gives him is a lead on a mysterious man who they think could be the source, and it happens to be a picture of Art. We then see Art chilling in a diner, waiting for whomever he was texting using Newt's phone. Many hours fly by, and eventually Robin shows up and starts looking around the diner, and finally she reveals that she is the person known as Bird, seen on the text messages on Newt's phone, as she calls out Newt's name next to the toilet door of the diner. Art stands outside and waits for Robin to leave the diner, and when she gets outside, she notices that the tires of the bike have been slashed and is forced to push the motorbike all the way home. However, Art follows her and grabs her, stuffing her in the back of the truck. At this time, Frank calls up Robin and tells her he needs a refill to finish his job given to him by the police department. Meanwhile, Art takes Robin to an abandoned location and interrogates her for information about the main source, and asks where Newt was getting his power from. And after much back and forth, she finally gives in, and he lets her sit in the passenger seat as she assists him on finding the top dog of the suppliers. Art presents her with a picture and asks if the man in the picture is Biggie, but she claims she doesn't know who Biggie is and she's never seen the source before. We then cut to a brief scene of the real Biggie and his boss, who's called Dr. Gardner, discussing their plans to release power to many other states and countries. And we see Biggie, who secretly meets with a woman who has deep ties to the South American cartel gangs and wants to know more. After we see Robin in the car with Art, and Robin sends a sneaky text to Frank asking for help and to rescue her from Art. After that, Art instructs Robin to phone the number on the phone and act like she needs help after Newt passing, and that she can take over on his end of the deal and move the power instead. And the guy agrees and gives her the location of a Hong Kong market, and the man told her to ask someone who works there for alligator wine. Upon arriving, she gives the secret code word and is guided into the back of the store. After speaking with one of the suppliers, she reveals that the guy who eliminated her friend Newt is here at the mall, and then the man takes a power-upper and locks Robin inside. After Newt notices something was up and starts immediately crashing out on all the guards and demands them to give up the location of the main man of the source called Biggie, and a fight takes place. However, during all this, Robin is still trapped inside the room, and it turns out the room was a trailer attached to the truck which starts to take off. After a lot of shots start blazing off and Robin ducks them all, and Art continues to fight them, and is luckily the last man standing and peeks through the bullet holes to check on Robin, but gets stunned by the man who took the power earlier, and he's still alive, and challenges Art. Many gunshots go off before going silent, and after the door handle starts to radically shake, and it turns out Art managed to deal with the man somehow, and it's possible Art took some power himself, but we don't know for sure. Anyways, Art enters the room where Robin was held, and after he feels incredibly dazed and confuses Robin for his own daughter Tracy, and speaks to Robin as if it was her, and this freaks Robin out. After Art gets it together and finds a locked room in the back and shoots it open, and inside is a computer workstation with many screens, and he figures out that power is owned by the governments, and they dish it out to anyone for free, as it's an experimental practice product to see how humans react to it so they can make a perfect product for the future. Upon understanding this, he locates the next private demonstration of power which other buyers and powerful leaders will be attending. After seeing Art's awful condition, Robin runs back in the store for help. And while this is happening, we see that the thug from earlier starts recovering and is alive. He rushes into the market and slaps Robin with a pan and nearly ends her off, but Art came in and eliminated the thug for good this time and made sure he was really dealt with. After that, Art was in a pretty bad condition and begged Robin for help, and that he was sorry about Newt, but he tells her that Genesis took his daughter Tracy and he must find the source of power before it's too late, and after gives Robin some money, and she finally gives in and helps Art finish the job on finding Biggie. Later on, Robin takes Art to a vet's hospital where her mother Irene works and patches him up, and after talking some more they eventually become friends, and Robin even shares some of her rapping skills with him. Soon after, Frank receives the text from Robin asking for his help, so he visits Robin's home to see if she was okay, but as he approaches the house, he notices that the same black-suited men he saw from the bank robbery earlier are inside talking to Robin's mother. They demand that Irene tell them where Robin is, otherwise things could get ugly real quick, and there will be serious consequences if her daughter doesn't show up soon. Frank hears all this and devises a swift and clever plan. As he opens the bathroom window, takes off his shirt and splashes water on his body, and pretends to be Irene's boyfriend, just some awkward secret lover boy who was still in the bathroom, and pretends he had no idea of what was going on. Irene herself was stunned to see this random dude come out of nowhere, but before she screws up the plan, he tells her that he's friends with her daughter Robin, and to remain calm, as he's a cop. He pressures the suited folks to leave the house, but they suggest Frank is lying about living here, as he didn't know they had a pet cat, but he turns the argument back on them by pulling the race card. After acting like an obnoxious and frightened citizen, the suited folks leave, and Frank quickly takes Irene's cell phone and stuck it on the back of the suited man's van to track their next location, in hopes that it will lead him straight to Biggie. After Frank follows the truck, and at this time, Art and Robin head to the location they saw on the screens to the demonstration of the power project. During their ride, Robin asked Art why he needs to find the source so badly, and that's when Art reveals that he worked for Genesis and was in the military unit for a while, but they experimented on him and wanted to change his cells and DNA using some radiation technique, but when he escaped he then went on to have a daughter, but she ended up developing powers, and after hearing this, they wanted their property back, being Tracy the daughter, and one day while driving the suited men took her, and he's just trying to get her back. When they arrive, Art pulls up to the spot and immediately notice one of the men who he saw on the screens of the computer workstation and steals his keys by sneakily pickpocketing them and hands them over to Robin. When he follows the man to the event, he asks a homeless dude for his beer and pretends to be a drunk fool, only to distract the guard, and it works in his favor. Upon taking out the guard, he enters the building and inside was the source, the main man. Biggie was giving a bunch of wealthy and rich folk a demonstration of the things power can do and why they should consider investing in the project for their own countries. He explains how the upper can transform your DNA on the fly with various different abilities combined together from the animal kingdom, and gives a piece of power to a woman who is inside a secure container. And when taking the power, She starts developing incredible ice powers, some sort of thermal regulation, and keeps the room warm to keep her comfortable, which is good for the audience's experience. Before you know it, Art sneaks up to one of the guards and decides to give him another breathing hole that he leaks out of. Sometime later, Frank arrives at the same place. As he followed the van, he stuck Irene's phone too, and upon arriving, he's shocked to see Robin's there already. Right then, Frank warns Robin about a guy called the Major, also known as Art, but she tells Frank that Art is actually one of the good guys. However, he's in full rage mode at the moment as he's trying to locate his daughter before it's too late. They argue back and forth on whether Art is innocent, but Art's behavior has Frank thinking he's Biggie instead, and Robin tells him he's not, but Frank said he will arrest him on sight when he catches him. Meanwhile, Art walks up to Biggie and holds him at gunpoint, sneakily putting the gun under the plate. Right then, one of the waitresses notices the body Art left behind leaking and screams, prompting the entire room to panic, and everyone there draws for their weapons while Art holds Biggie hostage. Right then, the cartel mob boss lady tells Art they can have him, and all they came for was the merchandise, and steals all the batch of power Biggie had prepared for the other VIPs. After that, a huge fight ensues, and it's Biggie's crew versus the cartels, and a massive shootout takes place, while Art does everything in his power to survive the battle in an epic cinematic fight sequence. Suddenly, one of the buyers take a piece of power for himself to deal with them all, but the power instantly backfired on him. We then see an insanely cool sequence of the battle happening from inside the container, which has been damaged and lost power, and unfortunately the ice power woman freezes and was eliminated due to an overload and couldn't control her power. After that, everyone was wiped out, but Art and Biggie are still remaining. Art then shows Biggie the same picture he showed Robin before, asking where they are taking all the prisoners in the Genesis headquarters location. But Biggie plays dumb, so Art gives him some motivation to start telling the truth. But before Art could end him off, Frank walks in and demands Art to stand down, but Art does a switcheroo and made Frank look like an amateur clown. But while Frank and Art argue, Biggie takes this opportunity to pop one of his magic power-uppers, and when he does, we find out how he came to get the nickname Biggie for the first time, as he grows into a giant monster. They are unable to defeat this giant creature, so they both decide to get out of there as quickly as possible, and while doing so, Art thinks of an idea to eliminate the monster by letting off some gas tanks, and Frank decides to snatch several more powers before they leave. Right then, Art fires some shots at the gas canisters, causing a massive explosion, and they manage to defeat the monster Biggie. Once outside, Frank arrests Art, but Robin intervenes, asking Art to just explain his story to Frank about his daughter and the truth of what's going on, but he tells her not to worry and to go home. After Frank drives off with Art, and Robin spots the guy from Art's photo and decides to follow him. While driving, Art warns Frank that things will get crazy from here, but he still has a chance to walk away from this alive if he listens to him, which Frank finds funny, as he's the one completely in control of the situation and driving him to the police station. But Art bets him that the chief of police will message him in the next 30 seconds, telling Frank not to bring him in and to remain where he is. And sure enough, that exact thing happens, which shocks Frank. Art then reveals to Frank that the police has now been compromised and that they are likely taking orders from the Genesis soldiers and the government, as they are using power as some sort of experiment and using people of New Orleans as test subjects for something much worse to come, like possibly creating enhanced soldiers. After that, Frank hears his story about his daughter Tracy and what they plan to do with her. So Frank decides to help Art take them down once and for all, and Art asks Frank if he still has any power-uppers left and gives one to Art. We then see a group of armed men surrounding Frank's car, but Frank is now gone. Sometime later, Robin has tailed the mysterious bearded man all the way to a dock, where Art arrives at with the armed men who take him aboard a huge cargo ship belonging to the Genesis company who created the power. Upon examining the ship, suddenly a wild Frank appears right behind her and isn't pleased she's still here trying to help out on this kind of mission. But instead of arguing on and on, he tells her to keep watch while he intercepts the situation, giving her a special earbud to stay connected. After Frank uses a power-upper and heads up to the side gate and tries playing the nice cop to gain quick entry, but it failed, and he gets popped by the angry security guard who leaves the door open, thinking Frank is completely eliminated, but he instantly recovers due to his bulletproof superpower, but accidentally loses the earbud that connected him back to Robin. After this, Art meets with Dr. Gardner, who explains her side of things, and that it's impossible for him to get Tracy back as they use her for further tests, and that Project Power will soon be a giant success all around the world. But Art tells her to think again, as he prepares to use a sneaky piece of power he has without her knowing it. Meanwhile, Frank takes out more guards and does it by sneaking behind them. At this time, Robin gets worried about the connection lost and decides to sneak in herself and hides in a truck that was loaded onto the ship. Next, she finds Frank, who was already in the part of the ship he needed to get to. And here, Robin arrives and saw Frank tying up some of the guards in the control room. And after they hear on the monitors that the people who captured Art request that they open up a specific door so they figure out how to use the controls, Frank spots a direct map of the ship and takes another earbud and a shotgun and asks Robin to keep him guided and open the doors to save Art. After closing the heavy metal door for safety, Art starts traveling across the ship, but they notice something's up in the control room, and a guy named Wallace takes a power-upper and is given Hulk-like strength to bash down the doors. While checking the monitors, Robin can't believe she saw Art's daughter Tracy, but this distracts her from assisting Frank, and another soldier was able to sneak behind Frank and disarm him. Right then, a hand-to-hand combat fight ensues, but Frank can't seem to hurt him as the soldier has also taken a power-upper, and his power turns his entire body into rubber like Luffy and tangles his stretchy limbs around Frank like Mr. Fantastic. However, during this encounter, Frank drops the earbud once again, so Robin decides to speak through the ship's main speaker, and this sparks Wallace to find the exact location of Robin and start bashing down the door of the control room. Frank nearly gets caught in the rubber man's trap, but with a quick technique, he manages to escape and quickly pulls the man's arm to a nearby door, which Robin closes and traps him completely, and Frank gets away. Soon after, Wallace manages to bring down the thick, heavy door to the control room, but upon entering, Robin had broken all the monitors and escaped through the emergency hatch. As the ship takes off, Frank decides to take his last bit of power and continues his search to free Art. Meanwhile, Art was held in a secure part of the ship with many guards, but he convinces them all to let him go as he reveals he had a power-upper in his mouth the whole time and swallows it, which scares the guards to free him since Art's power is pure chaos, and he even warns them all to leave or face the consequences of being around his powers. At this time, Wallace finds Art at the same time Frank arrives, so he delivers a huge punch on Frank, sending him flying before turning around and facing Art. So Frank quickly passes him the gun and Art fires 2 slugs at the hulking man and finally takes him out. After we see Robin searching the secure lavatory of the ship and spots our guard patrolling the area, so she hides and waits for the right time to knock him down, and after takes his key card, which gives her access to all the rooms in the lab where she finds Tracy and saw all the scars on her back from their experiments. At first, Tracy was wary of what was going on, but after she heard her dad was on board too, and instantly became happy that he didn't give up on her. Suddenly, Dr. Gardner comes in the lab and is looking for Tracy. However, Robin and Tracy manage to hide in a hatch under the floor and manage to swiftly escape without them seeing them. Soon after, they reach the main deck and spot Art with Frank, and Art and Tracy finally reunite, and the group tries finding a way out. But along the way, another power-enhanced guard shows up and tries attacking them with his pretty cool power that lets him grow new bones out of his body that are sharp and act as weapons. Another fight ensues, and the guy easily breaks Art's weapon in half with his sharp bones, after Art defends himself and fights back with a metal pole, which seems effective. Right then, Frank helps the 2 girls find an escape route and they head for the lifeboat, but the guards start firing at them, so Frank uses his bulletproof body as a shield. But Robin sees Art is in danger and goes back to help him. She frees a heavy wrecking ball weight and it hits the guard, saving Art, and after Art eliminates the guy by pushing his chest into his own bones. After Art makes it to the lifeboat with the others, however, Robin is suddenly taken by the guards and Dr. Gardner comes out and demands that Art hands over his daughter again, otherwise she will eliminate Robin. After hearing Robin cry for help, Art agrees and comes out with his hands up, but he actually takes some power and gains the power of a rare pistol shrimp, which vaporizes the water around him and allows him to fire extremely hot shockwaves of water, disintegrating the enemies and easily wiping them out as Art rages with anger against the organization and destroys their fleet. Robin is able to jump out of the way just in time as Art's power destroys all the containers, and a crane was broken and falls down onto Dr. Gardner. However, due to using up so much energy and power, Art's falls down and didn't wake up and is just about to be eliminated, but his daughter Tracy has the ability to heal and immediately comes to his side and brings him back to life. Straight after, they all reach the lifeboat and escape from the Genesis ship safely. Some time passes, and Art tells Frank he's leaving the city with Tracy and is going to live a new life and enjoy their time together as a family. Frank wishes them well and explains how he will be brining this story to a journalist and reveal how corrupt the force is, and Robin takes it upon herself to look after her mom and make sure she gets all the help she needs with the money Art gave her. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you're new here for more amazing movie recaps, and I will see you all in the next one. Until next time, guys, take care.